Jake Morrison stared at the coffee stain on his captain's chair and wondered how many more months he could keep the Lucky Strike running on duct tape and hope. The salvage ship groaned around him as it drifted through the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, its engines humming with the kind of sound that meant expensive repairs were coming soon. Jake had been running salvage operations for 12 years now, and he knew the difference between a ship that was tired and a ship that was dying. The Lucky Strike was getting close to the dying part. "Captain, you need to see this." Lisa Carter's voice cut through his gloomy thoughts. His second-in-command was hunched over the sensor station, her dark hair falling across her face as she adjusted the controls with practiced precision. Lisa had been with him for 5 years, ever since her military discharge, and she never got excited about anything unless it was worth getting excited about. Jake pushed himself out of his chair and floated over to her station, the artificial. Gravity on the Lucky Strike had been running at 60% for the past month because they couldn't afford to fix the generators. Everything felt lighter than it should, which made walking feel like swimming through thick air. "What have you got?" Jake asked, looking over her shoulder at the display screen. Long-range sensors picked up something big about 4 hours ago. I've been tracking it since then, trying to figure out what it is. Lisa pointed to a blip on the screen that was definitely not an asteroid. It's roughly 3 kilometers long, maybe half a kilometer wide, and it's not moving with the rest of the debris field. Jake felt his heart speed up. 3 kilometers was massive for anything that wasn't a space station or a military vessel. Could be a derelict freighter from the Jupiter colonies. That's what I thought at first, but look at this. Lisa switched to a different display that showed the object's energy signature. It's not reading like any human ship I've ever seen. The metal composition is completely unknown, and there are faint power readings coming from inside. Ryan Walsh looked up from his workstation across the small bridge. The tech specialist was barely 25, but he had fingers that could make any computer sing and a brain that understood technology better than most people understood breathing. Did someone say unknown metal composition? Because that sounds like the kind of thing that could pay for a new ship. Katie Brooks laughed from her position near the engine controls. The chief engineer was covered in grease stains as usual, but her blue eyes were bright with interest. Ryan's right. If it's some kind of new alloy, the mining companies would pay big money just for the analysis data. Sam Torres didn't say anything, but Jake could see the security chief thinking. Sam was the kind of person who looked at every situation and figured out what could go wrong, which made him invaluable on a salvage crew. His military background showed in the way he carried himself, even in low gravity. "How far away is it?" Jake asked. "About 6 hours at our current speed," Lisa replied. "But Captain, I should mention that the energy readings are really faint. Whatever power source this thing has, it's either running on backup systems or it's designed to be very quiet." Jake felt the familiar rush of excitement that came with a potential big score. In 12 years of salvage work, he had found plenty of abandoned ships and lost cargo containers, but nothing that could really change his life. Most salvage was just enough to keep the Lucky Strike running and food on the table. But something unknown, something that might contain technology or materials that nobody had seen before, that was the kind of find that could set a crew up for life. "Set course for the object," Jake ordered, "but keep us on passive sensors until we get closer. If there's anyone else out here, I don't want them knowing what we've found." Lisa's fingers danced across the navigation controls. "Course laid in, Captain. We should reach the object in about 5 hours and 40 minutes. Jake returned to his chair and tried to keep his excitement under control. Salvage work was mostly disappointment mixed with small victories and the occasional stroke of luck. He had learned not to get his hopes up too high, because that was the fastest way to go crazy in this business. But something about this find felt different. 3 kilometers of unknown ship floating dead in space, with power readings that suggested something was still active inside. Ryan, start running analysis on any data we can gather during the approach, Jake said. I want to know everything possible about this thing before we get close enough to dock. Already on it, Captain, Ryan replied, his hands moving quickly across multiple keyboards. I'm setting up passive scans for metal composition, energy signatures, and structural analysis. If this thing is as old as it looks, we might be dealing with technology that predates human space travel. Katie wiped her hands on a dirty rag and moved to a different control panel. I'm going to run diagnostics on all our cutting equipment and docking systems. If we're going to crack open something that big, we need to make sure all our tools are working properly. Sam finally spoke up from his station near the weapons controls. Captain, I recommend we approach with caution. Unknown ships can have automated defense systems, even if they appear to be derelict. I've seen too many salvage crews get hurt because they assumed dead meant safe. Jake nodded. Sam was right to be careful, but Jake could already feel the pull of whatever was waiting for them out there. 3 kilometers of unknown technology, just sitting in space waiting for someone brave enough to claim it. The kind of find that could buy a new ship, or maybe even a fleet of ships. The hours passed slowly as the Lucky Strike moved through the asteroid field toward their target. Jake found himself checking the sensors every few minutes, watching as the unknown object grew larger and more detailed on their screens. Lisa was right about the size measurements. The thing was huge, bigger than most military vessels, and definitely bigger than any civilian ship Jake had ever seen. Captain, we're getting our first visual, Ryan announced. Putting it on the main screen now. The bridge fell silent as the image appeared. The object floating ahead of them didn't look like any ship in human space. It was sleek and dark, with a hull that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. There were no visible engines, no communication arrays, no docking ports, and no markings of any kind. The entire surface appeared to be completely smooth, like it had been carved from a single piece of metal. That's not human, Katie said quietly. That's not even close to human. Lisa was running every scan she could think of. I'm not reading any hull breaches, no signs of battle damage, no radiation leaks. Whatever this thing is, it looks like it's in perfect condition. Perfect condition after how long floating in space? Sam asked. Captain, this is setting off all kinds of warning bells for me. Ships don't stay in perfect condition without maintenance. Jake stared at the image on the screen. The ship was beautiful in a way that made his skin crawl. Too perfect, too smooth, too much like something that had been designed by minds that thought differently than humans. But it was also the biggest potential payday of his entire career. Take us in slowly, Jake ordered. I want us close enough to dock, but ready to run if anything goes wrong. As the Lucky Strike approached the mysterious vessel, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that they were about to change their lives forever. He just hoped it would be a change for the better. The unknown ship hung in space ahead of them like a dark promise, 3 kilometers of secrets waiting to be discovered. Jake had spent his entire adult life breaking into abandoned ships and forgotten cargo containers, and he had never seen anything that looked like this. The Lucky Strike moved closer to its target, and Jake Morrison prepared to find out what kinds of treasures were waiting inside that perfect metal shell. Jake Morrison barely had time to remove his helmet before alarms started blaring throughout the Lucky Strike. The familiar sounds of his ship were now mixed with electronic screeches and warning tones that he had never heard before. Lisa Carter was frantically working at her station, her fingers flying across controls that seemed to be responding slower than usual. Report, Jake demanded as he moved to his captain's chair. Our computer systems are being invaded, Lisa said without looking up from her displays. Something is probing our databases, our navigation systems, even our life support controls. It's like the alien ship is learning everything about us. Ryan Walsh had plugged himself into multiple computer terminals and was trying to track whatever was infiltrating their systems. Captain, this isn't just a simple hack. Whatever is doing this is reading our computer code, our hardware specifications, even our maintenance logs. It's downloading everything. Katie Brooks emerged from the engine room with grease on her hands and worry in her eyes. The alien hull isn't just sitting there anymore. I can feel vibrations through our docking clamps. Something is moving inside that ship. Sam Torres was checking the weapon systems and found that half of them were not responding properly. Captain, our defensive systems are compromised. If we need to fight our way out of here, we're going to have problems. Jake felt a cold knot forming in his stomach. They had thought they were salvaging a dead ship, but instead they had woken up something that was now actively studying them. The red glow that had spread across the alien hull after their failed cutting attempts was getting brighter, and Jake could see it through the small porthole near his chair. Lisa, can we disconnect from the alien ship and get out of here? Jake asked. Lisa tried to activate the docking clamp release system, but nothing happened. The clamps aren't responding, Captain. It's like something is holding them closed. Ryan looked up from his computer terminals with a pale face. I found what's holding us. The alien ship has extended microscopic filaments through our docking clamps. They're so small, I can barely detect them, but they're physically connected to our hull now. Katie checked her engineering displays and confirmed Ryan's discovery. He's right, Captain. I'm reading foreign material integrated with our hull plating around the docking points. It's like the alien ship has grown into our ship. Jake made a decision that went against every instinct he had developed in 12 years of salvage work. We need to get back out there and cut those connections manually. Sam immediately objected. Captain, that hull just adapted to resist everything we threw at it. Going back out there could be walking into a trap. We don't have a choice, Jake replied. If we stay here, that thing is going to learn everything about human technology from our computers. We need to break free before it's too late. The crew suited up again, but this time they armed themselves with different tools. Instead of high-tech cutting equipment, Katie grabbed some explosive charges and old-fashioned mechanical tools. Ryan brought a portable computer that was isolated from the ship's main systems. Sam carried extra weapons and emergency supplies. When they stepped back onto the alien hull, everything had changed. The surface that had been smooth black metal was now covered with thin red lines that pulsed with internal light. The lines formed complex patterns that seemed to shift and move as they watched. Where their docking clamps were attached, the hull had grown up and around the metal like organic tissue. This is definitely not normal, Katie said as she examined the area where their ship was connected to the alien vessel. The hull has actually grown around our docking clamps. It's going to take explosives to break this connection. Ryan pointed his scanner at the pulsing red lines and got readings that made no sense. These patterns are carrying information. The hull is communicating with something, probably the systems that are invading our computers. Jake looked at the alien surface beneath his feet and realized they were standing on something that was more like a living creature than a machine. How long would it take to place charges that could break us free? Maybe 20 minutes to place them properly, Katie replied. But Captain, I'm not sure our ship can survive the kind of explosion it would take to break through this material. Sam was scanning the area around them and not liking what he was seeing. Captain, I'm detecting movement patterns across the entire hull. It's like the whole ship is waking up. As if responding to Sam's words, the alien hull began to change. More dramatically. Sections of the smooth surface started to rise and form geometric shapes. The red lines became brighter and began to pulse faster. Most disturbing of all, The warm feeling that Jake had noticed when they first docked was getting stronger. "The hull temperature is rising," Ryan reported. "Not enough to damage our suits yet, but it's definitely getting warmer." Jake made another decision that he would regret. "Katie, start placing the charges. We're getting off this thing before it decides we're a threat." Katie began attaching explosive devices to the areas where their ship was connected to the alien hull. The work was slow and dangerous because the hull material kept shifting and changing around the docking clamps. Every time she thought she had found a good spot for a charge, the metal would flow like liquid and change the structure. "This is like trying to attach explosives to water," Katie muttered through the comm system. "The hull keeps adapting to prevent me from placing the charges effectively." Ryan was monitoring the alien ship's activity and growing more concerned by the minute. "Captain, the energy readings from this ship are increasing exponentially. Whatever we woke up, it's getting stronger." Sam pointed to an area of the hull about 50 meters away from their position. "Look at that." Jake turned to see what Sam was indicating and felt his heart skip a beat. The smooth surface of the alien hull was opening, not like a hatch or airlock, but like a flower blooming. The metal simply flowed aside to reveal a dark opening that led into the interior of the ship. "It's inviting us in," Ryan said with disbelief in his voice. "Or it's preparing to do something we're not going to like," Sam replied, checking his weapons. The opening in the hull grew larger, and Jake could see that the interior was not dark after all. There were lights inside, soft blue lights that seemed to pulse in rhythm with the red lines on the hull. The lights were beautiful and somehow welcoming, but Jake had learned not to trust beautiful things in space. "Katie, how much longer for those charges?" Jake asked. "I need at least 10 more minutes," Katie replied. "But Captain, I'm not sure these explosives are going to work. The hull material is adapting faster than I can place the charges." Lisa's voice came through their comm systems from the Lucky Strike with urgency. "Captain, our computer systems are completely compromised now. The alien intelligence has access to our navigation database, our communication logs, and our ship specifications. It knows everything about our technology." Jake felt the situation spinning out of control. They were trapped on an alien ship that was learning everything about human capabilities while they struggled to break free. The opening in the hull was getting larger, and Jake could swear he heard something moving around inside. "New plan," Jake announced. "Ryan, you and Lisa work together to isolate our computer systems and prevent any more information from being downloaded. Katie and Sam, keep working on those charges. I'm going to take a look inside that opening." "Captain, that's a terrible idea," Sam said immediately. "Maybe, but we need to know what we're dealing with," Jake replied. "If I'm not back in 15 minutes, blow the charges and get out of here whether I'm with you or not." Jake moved carefully toward the opening in the alien hull. As he got closer, he could see that the interior was not just lit by those blue lights. The walls inside were covered with the same pulsing red patterns that had appeared on the exterior, but these patterns were more complex and seemed to be actively processing information. When Jake reached the edge of the opening, he looked down into the alien ship and saw something that made him understand just how much trouble they were in. The interior wasn't empty. It was filled with moving parts, flowing metal, and patterns of light that suggested a technology far beyond anything humans had ever imagined. And all of it was focused on learning everything it could about the humans who had dared to disturb its long sleep. Jake Morrison realized that they had not found a derelict ship to salvage. They had found something that was very much alive, very intelligent, and now very interested in the species that had tried to break into its shell. Jake Morrison stared into the opening of the alien ship and watched as streams of tiny silver particles flowed upward from the interior like metallic smoke. The particles moved with purpose, swirling around his suit and seeming to examine every detail of his equipment. Jake tried to step back from the opening, but the particles followed him, surrounding him in a cloud of microscopic machines. "Captain, get away from there!" Sam Torres shouted through the comm system. "Those things are scanning you." Jake tried to brush the particles away from his helmet, but they passed right through his gloved hands like they weren't solid. "I can't touch them. They're like some kind of advanced nanobots." Ryan Walsh pointed his scanner at the cloud of particles surrounding Jake and got readings that made him step backward. "Captain, those aren't just scanning you. They're taking samples. Molecular-level samples of your suit, your equipment, everything." Katie Brooks looked up from the explosive charges she was placing and saw more streams of the silver particles rising from the opening in the hull. "There are more of them coming up. A lot more." The cloud of nanobots around Jake suddenly dispersed and flowed back toward the opening in the alien hull. Jake felt relieved for about 3 seconds, until he realized what the particles had been doing. They hadn't just been scanning his equipment. They had been learning how to replicate it. "Captain, we have a serious problem," Lisa Carter's voice came through the comm system from the Lucky Strike. "Our hull is being penetrated by something microscopic. Whatever those particles were, some of them made it back to our ship." Jake ran toward the docking clamps where Katie was still working on the explosive charges. "How much longer, Katie?" 5 more minutes, but Captain, look at this." Katie pointed to the area where she had been placing charges. The alien hull had grown new structures around each explosive device, structures that looked remarkably similar to the blast-resistant armor used on human military vessels. "The hull has learned about our explosives, and it's developing countermeasures." Sam was scanning the surface around them and reporting energy signatures that were getting stronger by the minute. "The entire ship is powering up. Whatever we woke up, it's not going back to sleep." More openings began to appear in the alien hull, each one releasing clouds of the silver nanobots. The particles spread across the surface of the ship and began to change its appearance. Areas that had been smooth metal started to develop new textures and structures. Some sections became reflective like mirrors, others became transparent like glass, and still others took on the appearance of materials that Jake didn't recognize. "Ryan, what are your readings showing?" Jake asked as he watched the hull transform around them. "The ship is redesigning itself in real time," Ryan replied. "It's incorporating design elements from our ship, our equipment, even our clothing. It's like it's trying to understand how humans build things." Lisa's voice came through the comm system with increasing panic. "Captain, the nanobots have reached our computer core. They're not just downloading our files anymore. They're physically altering our hardware. Our systems are being redesigned from the inside." Jake felt the situation slipping completely out of control. The alien ship wasn't just defending itself anymore. It was actively studying them, learning from them, and changing based on what it learned. Every piece of technology they had brought near, it was being analyzed and incorporated into its growing understanding of human capabilities. "Katie, forget the precise placement. Just set off whatever charges you have ready." Katie activated the detonator for the charges she had already placed. The explosions lit up the space around them with brilliant flashes, but when the light faded, the docking clamps were still intact. The alien hull had absorbed most of the blast energy, and the structures around the explosives had protected the connections. "The charges barely scratched it," Katie reported. "The hull adapted to our explosives faster than I could set them off." Sam pointed to another section of the alien ship where new structures were emerging from the surface. "Captain, look at that. Does that look familiar to you?" Jake looked where Sam was pointing and felt his blood turn cold. The alien hull was growing structures that looked exactly like human weapon systems. Missile launchers, energy cannon mounts, and defensive barriers. were emerging from the smooth metal, all based on designs that the ship had learned from their computer systems. "It's building weapons," Jake said with growing horror. "It's building human weapons." Ryan was frantically scanning the new structures and confirming Jake's worst fears. "Those aren't just copies, Captain. They're improvements. The ship has taken our weapon designs and made them better. More efficient, more powerful, more accurate." The alien ship was no longer content to simply defend itself. It was preparing to fight back. The weapons that were emerging from its hull were pointed directly at the Lucky Strike. Jake realized that they had perhaps minutes before the alien ship decided that the best way to deal with humans was to eliminate them entirely. "Lisa, emergency disconnect protocol," Jake ordered. "Overload the docking clamps if you have to." "I'm trying, Captain, but our systems aren't responding properly," Lisa replied. "The nanobots have changed our computer code. The ship won't obey our commands." Katie was placing more explosive charges, but now she was targeting the Lucky Strike's own docking clamps instead of the alien hull. "If I can't break the alien connections, maybe I can break our own equipment." "Do it," Jake ordered. "Whatever it takes to get us free." As Katie worked, Jake noticed that the nanobots were becoming more active. Clouds of the silver particles were flowing across the alien hull in complex patterns, carrying information between different sections of the ship. The alien vessel was coordinating its activities with an efficiency that no human organization could match. "Captain, I'm reading massive energy buildups in those weapon systems," Sam reported. "If this thing decides to shoot at us, our ship won't survive." Ryan was trying to use his portable computer to hack into the alien systems, but his attempts were being blocked by defenses that adapted faster than he could work. "The ship's intelligence is learning our computer languages in real time. Every time I try a new approach, it develops countermeasures within seconds." Jake made a decision that went against every survival instinct he had. "Ryan, stop trying to fight its systems. Instead, try to communicate with it." "Communicate?" Ryan looked at Jake like he had lost his mind. "Captain, this thing is getting ready to kill us." "Maybe it's getting ready to defend itself because it thinks we're trying to kill it," Jake replied. "We came here and started cutting into its hull. From its perspective, we attacked first." Sam immediately objected to this plan. "Captain, that thing has been downloading everything about human technology and building weapons based on our designs. It's not looking for conversation. Then we need to show it that we're not a threat," Jake said. "Ryan, can you send a message through your computer that shows we want to leave peacefully?" Ryan hesitated for a moment, then began typing rapidly on his portable system. "I'm sending mathematical sequences, peaceful symbols, anything that might indicate we don't want to fight." For a few seconds, nothing happened. Then the weapon systems that had been emerging from the alien hull stopped growing. The nanobots flowing across the surface slowed their activity. The pulsing red patterns that covered the ship changed from an angry red color to a softer blue. "I think it's working," Ryan said with surprise. "The ship's aggressive behavior is decreasing." Katie had finished placing charges on their own docking clamps and was ready to detonate them. "Captain, should I blow our clamps?" Jake was about to give the order when something unexpected happened. The alien hull around their docking clamps began to flow and change, gradually releasing its grip on the Lucky Strike. The microscopic filaments that had been holding them in place withdrew into the alien ship's surface. "The ship is letting us go," Lisa reported from the Lucky Strike. "Docking clamps are free. We can disconnect whenever you're ready." Jake felt a mixture of relief and amazement. The alien intelligence had understood their message and was allowing them to leave. But as the crew prepared to return to their ship, Jake realized that their encounter was far from over. The alien vessel had learned everything about human technology, human capabilities, and human intentions. It now knew exactly where Earth was located and how to get there. The silver nanobots that had been studying them were still active, and Jake could see streams of the particles flowing back into the openings. In the alien hull, they were carrying with them complete knowledge of everything they had encountered, including detailed information about human space travel, human weapons, and human weaknesses. Jake Morrison understood that they had awakened something that would never go back to sleep, and now it knew everything about the species that had disturbed its rest. The docking clamps of the Lucky Strike locked onto the alien hull with a sound that Jake Morrison had heard 1,000 times before, but this time it felt different. The metal they were attached to didn't give the usual slight vibration that came from connecting with another ship. Instead, it felt solid and unyielding, like they had just clamped onto a mountain. "Docking complete, Captain," Lisa Carter announced from her station. "Hull integrity is good, and we have a solid connection. But I'm getting some strange readings from the contact points." Jake unbuckled himself from his captain's chair and moved toward the airlock. "What kind of strange readings?" "The metal, where our clamps are attached, seems to be warming up slightly," Lisa said, checking her instruments again. "It's not dangerous, but it's like the hull is reacting to our presence." Ryan Walsh was already suiting up in his EVA gear near the airlock. "Could be some kind of thermal regulation system. If this ship has been in space for a long time, it might have automated systems to deal with temperature changes." Katie Brooks emerged from the engine room carrying a large case filled with cutting tools. "I've got plasma torches, laser cutters, molecular disruptors, and some good old-fashioned drilling equipment. If we can't get through this hull with all this gear, then it's tougher than anything humans have ever built." Sam Torres checked his sidearm and picked up a scanner that could detect energy signatures and structural weaknesses. "I still don't like this, Captain. We don't know what we're dealing with, and we're about to start cutting holes in something that might not want to be cut open." Jake put on his own EVA suit and grabbed a portable scanner. "Sam, I understand your concerns, but this could be the find of a lifetime. We'll be careful, but we're not walking away from this without at least trying to see what's inside." The crew moved through the airlock and stepped onto the surface of the alien vessel. Jake had walked on dozens of derelict ships over the years, but nothing had prepared him for this. The hull beneath his magnetic boots felt warm, even through his suit, and the surface was so smooth it looked like black glass. There were no rivet lines, no weld marks, no signs that this ship had been built by assembling pieces together. It looked like it had been grown rather than constructed. "Ryan, what are your readings showing?" Jake asked through the com system. Ryan pointed his scanner at the hull and frowned at the display. "This is weird, Captain. The metal is showing up as an unknown alloy, but the readings keep changing every time I scan the same spot. It's like the composition is shifting." Katie set down her tool case and pulled out a plasma torch. "Let's see how this stuff handles." Some heat. She ignited the torch and applied it to a small section of the hull. The blue flame that could cut through most known materials barely seemed to warm the surface. "Try turning up the power," Jake suggested. Katie adjusted the controls, and the flame became brighter and hotter. For a moment, it seemed like the metal might be warming up, but then something strange happened. The area around the torch began to take on a different color, shifting from black to dark blue to deep purple. When Katie pulled the torch away, the metal looked exactly the same as before. "That's impossible," Katie said. "This torch can cut through battleship armor, and it didn't even leave a mark." Lisa's voice came through their com systems from back on the Lucky Strike. "I'm monitoring your suit telemetry, and I'm seeing some unusual energy readings from the hull near your position. It's like the ship is responding to what you're doing." Ryan moved his scanner closer to the area where Katie had used the torch. The metal composition in this spot has definitely changed. It's showing a much higher concentration of heat-resistant elements than it was a few minutes ago. Sam took a step back from the hull. Are you telling me this metal just adapted to resist our cutting torch? That's exactly what I'm telling you, Ryan replied. And if I'm reading this correctly, the change is spreading outward from the point where Katie applied the heat. Jake felt a chill run down his spine, but he forced himself to stay focused. Adaptive materials were theoretical in human science. But if they had found a ship that actually used them, the technology would be worth more than he could imagine. Katie, try the laser cutter. Jake ordered. Katie put away the plasma torch and pulled out a device that used focused coherent light to slice through materials. She aimed it at a different section of the hull and activated it. The red beam that could cut through almost anything struck the metal and simply disappeared. There was no reflection, no scattering, no sign that the beam was having any effect at all. The laser is being absorbed, Katie said in disbelief. The hull is just soaking up the energy like a sponge. Ryan scanned the new area and shook his head. The metal composition here has changed too. It's now showing properties that would make it completely immune to laser cutting. Jake was starting to understand what they were dealing with, and it both excited and terrified him. The hull is learning from our attacks and adapting to defend against them. Sam was scanning the area around them with growing concern. Captain, I'm detecting energy fluctuations spreading across the entire surface of the ship. Whatever we're doing is waking something up. Katie tried her molecular disruptor next, a device that could break apart the atomic bonds in most materials. When she activated it against the hull, the metal seemed to shimmer for a moment, but then returned to its normal appearance. Ryan's scanner showed that this section of the hull had developed a crystalline structure that dispersed the disruptor's effects. This is incredible, Ryan said. The hull isn't just defending itself. It's learning from each attack and developing specific countermeasures. Jake looked at the smooth surface beneath his feet and realized they were standing on something far more advanced than any human technology. But he had come too far to give up now. Katie, what about kinetic force? Try the drilling equipment. Katie pulled out a high-powered drill designed for emergency hull breaches. The diamond-tipped bit could punch through most materials in seconds. She pressed it against the hull and activated it. The drill bit touched the metal and began to turn, but instead of cutting through, it simply slid across the surface without leaving a mark. The hull has become harder than the drill bit, Katie reported. It's like trying to drill through solid diamond with a steel bit. Sam was checking his energy scanner with increasing alarm. Captain, the entire ship is showing elevated energy readings now. Whatever intelligence is controlling this hull, we've definitely gotten its attention. Jake made a decision that he would later regret. We need to try multiple approaches at once. Maybe we can overwhelm its ability to adapt. The crew spread out across a small section of the hull and began attacking it with everything they had. Katie used the plasma torch, while Ryan applied the laser cutter and Sam struck the surface with a kinetic hammer. For a moment, it seemed like their combined assault might be having an effect. The metal began to glow and shift colors rapidly as it tried to adapt to multiple threats simultaneously. Then the hull struck back. The plasma torch in Katie's hands suddenly flared with dangerous intensity as the metal began reflecting the heat back at her. Ryan's laser cutter started sparking and smoking as its own beam was turned against its internal components. Sam's kinetic hammer bounced back from the surface with enough force to knock him off his feet. Everyone back to the ship. Now, Jake shouted as the crew retreated toward the Lucky Strike. Jake looked back at the alien hull and saw something that made his blood run cold. The metal where they had been attacking was no longer black. It had turned a deep red color, and the red was spreading outward like blood through water. The hull wasn't just defending itself anymore. It was angry. Lisa's voice crackled through their comm systems as they reached the airlock. "Captain, you need to get back here immediately. Our computer systems are showing anomalous activity. Something is trying to access our databases." Jake was the last one through the airlock, and as it sealed behind him, he couldn't shake the feeling that they had just made a terrible mistake. They had come here expecting to salvage a dead ship, but instead they had found something that was very much alive, and now it knew they were here.